Okay. I'm recording this video pretty late because the topic is a little sensitive to my mom and I don't want her to overhear me. Um, and I had debated on which story I wanted to tell, the really depressing one or the amazing and exciting one. That has happened to me between uh, my last videos and now. I so I was born in 1970, and I was born when my mom was 19, and it was an out of wedlock type situation. Um, and she and I lived with my grandparents for a little bit and then with my aunt for a little bit. Um, when I was 2, my mom married the man that I grew up calling Dad. He was my dad. He took care of me. Um, he treated me like his own. Um, and I will always feel that way about him. Um, I wasn't told a whole lot about my biological father, and I didn't really want to talk about it anyway. There was just like, I remember one instance when my mom asked me if I wanted to know anything, and I just felt so uncomfortable. And the reason I felt uncomfortable was because um, I knew I really wasn't a member of that family because my mom and my dad, my stepdad, um, he adopted me, so he was my dad, but not blood. They had children, and he had a son. And for example, when we all had to go to get physicals for school, and they called the kids in, and they called everyone with the Italian last name. This was before he adopted me, and then I had a different last name when they called me in. So I was aware of the fact that I wasn't a full member of the family, and so I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't like entertaining the feelings that I had about not being a truly um, really long last name, Italian last name. And always having to explain to people how I had an Irish first name and Italian last name. Um, and and I went through a lot growing up as a kid. Um, there was alcoholism. We were poor a lot of the time. Um, I was socially inept, um, or at least I felt I was not good socially. I was extremely shy. They called it just very bashful or shy, but it was social anxiety. Um, went to bed for to a late age. Um, so sometimes I would be so upset about what was going on around me and my emotions. I would fantasize that the police would come and um, take me um, away and take me to my real father, because in my mind, he probably had a really nice family in a nice house in a steady job and um, pleasant, loving. And I'm not saying my parents, who I grew up with, loved me, but they had so many issues of their own that they were absent even though they were there. Um, and I would also, but at the same time, and I would go on these walks late at night, which is a habit I still have. And see, like, they would have parties and stuff, and they wouldn't keep track of the kids, so I could go walking wherever I wanted, whenever. And I would kind of have a game in my head where when I walk by windows with the lights on and I would try to see what was going on inside. Is there TV on? Is somebody kicked back in a lazy boy with a newspaper? And I'm imagining how nice and warm and cozy everybody else's home. I just almost wanted to walk in the door and say, I'm going to live here now. And then all of a sudden, I would get angry at the idea that if I find out that my real dad had a family and kids that he brought up um, in a great environment and loving and kind, I will be so angry that he left me here. He did not come for me. Um, so um, there's that. Um, I got as I got older, I started to understand my parents, as an adult. I started to understand my parents better. Like, my dad showed affection with money. So if I was like, a friend was supposed to come and take pictures of me when um during my capping ceremony for nursing school, and she didn't show up, didn't call, nothing, and I was really upset. And my dad's like, gets out his wallet, starts counting money, trying to, yeah. So, and also, after I got out of my punk rock stage, I got closer to my brothers. And there's this thing that if you have this last name, I'm not telling you my last name, but it's rare, long, Sicilian, I'm sorry. Because if you say Italian to a Sicilian person, they get upset. Name. I, I think after I was adopted, it wasn't until I was like 15, because that's when the first time I went into the hospital for depression, and when I expressed how I felt by just my last name not being the same. And so um, they fixed that, and then I felt a tighter bond to my brothers. And as we all got older, you know, regardless of the problems or disagreements, we were tight, you know. Um, so I'm living life with this is my family, this, and that's it. And I never gave much thought to the other half of my DNA. I looked so much like my mom and everyone on her side of the family. Um, and so it was just, I gravitated towards, I was in that family of my mom's. There was, and just my dad was my dad. We didn't share any blood, but um, he was there in his way for me. Um, so I'm gonna pause for a second because I forgot my drink and um, my mouth's getting dry. Okay. So I had seen one picture of him, but I couldn't really see him. It was his back, and he was giving me a gift, and I was a baby. That's all I visually. That's all I had. Um, and then one day, 2017, I think it was January, I opened up my Facebook page, and there were these two messages, one from two different people with my biological father's last name. And and they looked to be pretty much around my age, a little younger. Um, and I showed my mom, and I'm like, this has got to be, I mean, it's a very unique name. Something like Polish, but I don't think it's actually Polish, but somewhere in there. And my mom said that it was completely up to me if I wanted to respond. But what they wrote to me was amazing. He had been looking for me all this time. So we're talking, I would have been 46. So over 40 years. He had been originally going through, he knew about where he stayed. They lived in the same area that I had lived, and he would get phone books and look up my mom's maiden last name, and he was calling everybody with that last name, looking for her to find me. And he had all these phone books, and he became a substitute teacher and would go to the schools where I would have been at that age and look in all the yearbooks trying to find me. But he may have come, well, he knew my first name, but it I went, even though my dad hadn't adopted me yet, I went by his last name in school. Um, so he would have seen back then. Megan, my name is Megan. Um, it was a rare first name, so he may have come across it or not. I don't know. Um, but he periodically would, look on the internet, and he was trying to find my mom so he could find me. Um, because he didn't know what last name I would have by then. But my mom had remarried, married, divorced, married, and and then she was gotten divorced for like a second time, but kept his last name. So anytime he said he tried Facebook before, but he could never find her. But that was because she had still was using her married name. And she decided in 2017 to go back to her maiden name. And so when he just on a whim decided to have a look again, there she was with the name that he knew her as when she was 19. And he looked at her friend list and saw me. He's like, this has got to be her. This has got to be her. And so that's when he was married. He had two daughters, a few years younger than me. Um, and I talked to the daughters first on the phone, and then I talked to him. And he pretty much just cried the whole time. And all he kept saying was, I'm sorry. And I just was like, well, I've kind of processed this whole thing, so it's not something you need, you're forgiven. It's not really something you need to be forgiven for, because I don't think like that. I don't look back. Um, and then in April of 2017, I went out there to meet them, and they are all wonderful people, um, very loving and caring. Lots of people. We had like this dinner with lots of food, and like everybody and their brother came to meet me, and it was kind of surprising because normally a situation like that would just totally freak my shit out. I mean, there were these people, they're excited, their family, they're excited. I'm a new relative, long lost relative, and I'm found, and I have to say that before I forget, some people might wonder why I chose to I continue a relationship with them. I've been there like 3 times, but um and I text my dad. I have dad 1 and dad 2 now. Um um Part of it was that, here's this 70 something year old man who's been searching for years. They're very religious, but not in too annoying of a way. They're very, not a pressuring or anything, but um, I just felt it was important for me to play that part for him to be able to rest that, you know, just be able to put that down, and um, when his time comes, he'll know that, it wasn't left un. And I was, I went into their house and they had pictures of me. Apparently, at some time, he had called. I didn't know my grandma. I knew my grandmother as one kind of person, but apparently he had tried to call when I was a baby and was living there with my grandparents, and she hung up on him. And I guess she was probably, see, my mom still hurts that he didn't stick around. And so I think that my grandmother probably was hurt for her daughter hurting. So, because all moms do that. My mom did it when I resigned, you know. So, um, uh, the pictures, but he did finally ask if he could have some pictures when I was a kid without me knowing. And I think maybe they asked me, but I don't remember. But I go into this house and they have pictures of family. And in this room, there are pictures of his two daughters and me. And there's another picture in a frame on there of me. And he, as they grew up, he would tell them about their sister, Megan. You have a sister. This is your sister, you know, and we're going to find her someday. It was kind of almost creepy, but really neat. Um, his wife said something a little scary. She gave me a hug. And she said, "I'm so glad you're here." And I love him. His name, she said, "I love him, like with all my heart," something like that. Just don't hurt him, like in a way, protective way, which I understand. Um, and so, um, and so I have visited 3 times. Um, I asked my mom, I said, where do if I have an interesting conversation or something, or a topic or something that comes from that side of the world, do you mind if I share it, or do you prefer that I just keep that to myself? And she said, just keep it to yourself, because she has expressed that she's still very angry because she wants to know where he was way back then. But that first time I went and he met me at the airport, and he just like gave me this huge hug, and he was just crying and crying, and just all he kept saying was, "I'm sorry." I don't know how many times I had to finally he finally doesn't do it anymore. I think I've convinced him. Um, we I call him once a week, but we text a lot. I think his other daughters showed him how to text so he could, and so he can text. Um, he has a lot of health problems right now, so I'm actually glad he found me, before he gets some really serious health problems or passes away. Um, I, it's a little complicated, um, keeping it separate, that I have to sneak around when I make the phone call and I talk to him. I'll like go to my car because I don't want my mom to get upset. But I have it was my choice to make, and part of that choice was for myself, and part of it was for a kind thing to do for an old man. Um, um, but what is weird is that I used to just think I had a lot of, I was just strange, but it turns out that our personalities, I might look a lot like my mom, but my personality is identical to his. Um, we both collect vinyl, listen to music, like blues, jazz type music, bluegrass, definitely. Um, in fact, they played in a band. He plays the harmonica, and his wife sings, and it's really good stuff. And we have a tendency to get into something and like research it to death and move on to something else. So he's like this walking random encyclopedia, you know. So he likes to teach, and like we go to this marsh, or yeah, I think it's a marsh, and there are a lot of birds there, and he's pointing out the birds. He likes to teach and instruct, but I mean, he was a teacher, and um, just um, I feel it's unusual for me to feel comfortable just being with someone, not having to talk a whole lot, just being with someone. And I feel that with him because I feel like I had a lot of answers to questions I had about my own personality. Are they quirks and stuff? And really, it comes from him. So, um, he's very supportive, and so is my dad. One, dad one is the dad that raised me, and dad two is the dad that found me. The dad that found me is grateful to the dad that raised me. Um, and that he did take me as his own, um, and we were looking through photo albums, and he let me select a few, which I'll put up here because to everybody else on that side, it's um, past, and to me, it's the present. Things I never knew, and so that is my uh, success story of a biological parent finding their child after 40 years. And the fact that he was looking for me that whole time definitely makes me feel a lot better. Um, and I don't drag that around anymore. That little girl that wishes, my real dad's gonna come and get me. You know, you guys can stay here. So there's still a tiny, tiny bit of me that sometimes feels like I was left behind or left out, and I should have gotten the benefit of having those parents rather than the parents I did. But I also believe that everything happens for a reason when it happens. And I know that a lot of times that is difficult to explain away, but I think that sometimes things happen and we're not the ones that know what it did or how it affected other things. So it may have supposed to have happened, but that the part that comes after may have something to do with somebody else. It's a whole philosophy that I am not going to get into right now. So I'm going to show you some pictures. The pictures that he had of me that I saw in the house when I went in, and the pictures of him when I went to visit and he let me pick out. And a really cool picture I took of him while I was there. So that's it for the talking part.